to please switch off your mobile phones or keep them on silent mode so that we may have an uninterrupted and meaningful session. Thank you for your cooperation. It gives me an immense pleasure to host today's symposium on the theme Elimination of Global Caste and Analogous Systems of Social Hierarchies. On behalf of Center for Social Justice, Madras School of Social Work, and all collaborating organizations, I extend my warm greetings, warm welcome to all the distinguished guests, speakers, panelists, faculty members, students, scholars, activists, and participants gathered here today. Before we formally begin the symposium, I request everyone to kindly rise for Tamil Thai Valthu.
நீராடும் கடலுடுத்த நிலமடந்தை கெழிலொழுகும் சீராரும் வதனமென திகழ் பரத கண்டமெதில் தெக்கனமும் அது சிறந்த திராவிடனல் திருநாடும் தக்க சிறு பிறை நுதலும் தரித்தனரும் திலகமுமே அத்திலக வாசனை போல் அனைத்துலகும் இன்பமுற எத்திசையும் புகழ் மணக்க இருந்த பெரும் தமிழனங்கே தமிழனங்கே உன் சீரிலமை திறம் வியந்து செயல் மறந்து வாழ்த்துதுமே வாழ்த்துதுமே வாழ்த்துதுமே.
Thank you. Please be seated. To set the context for today's symposium, I would like to show you all a small video clip of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar. 1 minute only. Yes. Starting.
As the ultimate goal is concerned, I think none of us need have any apprehensions. None of us need have any doubt. But my fear, which I must express clearly, is this. Our difficulty, as I said, is not about the ultimate future. Our difficulty is how to make the heterogeneous mess that we have today take a decision in common and march in a cooperative way on that road which is bound to lead us to unity. Our difficulty is not with regard to the ultimate. Our difficulty is with regard to the beginning.
Thank you. So, I would like to recall the powerful words of Babasaheb Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, spoken on 25th November 1949. On the 26th January 1950, we are going to enter into a life of contradiction, and it goes on. If we continue to deny equality for long, we will do so only by putting our political democracy in peril. The words of Babasaheb remain deeply relevant even today. Despite constitutional guarantees, caste-based discrimination and social hierarchies continue to shape our everyday social and economic realities across the globe. Hence, this symposium is organized to critically reflect on these contradictions and collectively deliberate on pathways towards equality, dignity, and social justice. To formally begin the symposium, I invite Dr. S. Raja Samuel, Principal, Madras School of Social Work, to deliver welcome address. Sir.
Esteemed dignitaries on the stage, dear participants, students, Discriminated on Work and Dissent, and Center for Social Justice, which is part of Madras School of Social Work. At this juncture, I want to first invite and welcome Dr. thol.thirumavalavan, who is esteemed Member of Parliament and former Chair of Asia Parliamentarian Forum on Dalit Concerns. Dr. Thiruma is a well-known facet in the work on Dalit concerns and issues. It's indeed a delight to have your participation, sir, here. முனைவர் திருமாவை பற்றி கட்டாயம் நான் ஒரு பதிவை இந்த இடத்துல செய்ய வேண்டும். ஒரு சில வருடங்களுக்கு முன்பாக இதே போல ஒரு நிகழ்ச்சியிலே அவர் வந்திருந்தார். வந்தப்போ ஒன்னா இந்த நிகழ்ச்சிக்கு முன்னால தேநீருக்காக அமர்ந்திருந்தோம். அப்போ ஒரு மாணவி வந்து ஒரு தேநீர் கொண்டு வந்தாங்க. அவருக்கும் ஒன்று கொடுத்தாங்க. அவர் பெற்றுக்கொண்டார். எனக்கு கொடுத்தப்ப நான் சொன்னேன், எனக்கு இப்ப வேண்டாம் அப்படின்னு சொன்னேன். அப்ப அவர் என்ன பார்த்து வாங்கிக்கங்க அப்படின்னு சொன்னார். ரொம்ப அன்பாக வாங்கி, ஒரு மதிப்போடும் ஒரு அன்போடும் ஒரு பொருளை உங்களுக்கு கொடுக்கும் போது அதை நீங்கள் மறுக்க கூடாது என்ற ஒரு அழகான ஒரு பண்பை அன்றைக்கு நான் கற்றுக்கொண்டேன். அப்போ ஒரு சின்ன ஒரு இன்டராக்ஷன்லயே, ஒரு சிறிய ஒரு இன்டராக்ஷன்லயே அப்படிப்பட்ட ஒரு பண்பை கற்றுக் கொடுத்த அது எனக்கு ஞாபகம் இருக்கு. மிக்க நன்றி. அப்படிப்பட்டவர் இன்று நம்மோடு இணைந்திருப்பது மிகவும் பெருமை. உங்களை மனதார எங்கள் கல்லூரியின் சார்பிலும் இந்த ஆர்கனைசரோட சார்பிலும் உங்களை வரவேற்கிறேன். We are also joined today by Dr. Paul Divakar Namla, one of our alumnus, esteemed alumnus. His photo and his wife both are together working in this field for years together, for decades. Their photo is in our Hall of Fame. That is the level to which he has been able to work for this issue at a global level. It's indeed a delight, Dr. Paul, to invite you, to welcome you. He's part of the Global Forum of Communities Discriminated on Work and Dissent, and is a global convener for this organization. He's also a Dalit rights advocate. I'm also glad to welcome Ms. Beena Palikal, who is a Dalit feminist leader and General Secretary of National Campaign for Dalit Human Rights, and also Chair of ADRF, another organization working at the grassroots level. Very, very warm welcome to you, ma'am. And we are also joined by Dr. Ramesh Nathan, who was long years of working in the field for Dalit concerns. He is also the former General Secretary, National Dalit Movement for Justice, and which is part of National Campaign on Dalit Human Rights. And I also want to welcome our own Director for the Center for Social Justice here, Professor Pavanandi Vemblu. This center is established with the support of the Adi Dravida and Tribal Welfare Department of the Government of Tamil Nadu, which is doing a lot of work. Right now a campaign is going on Samathuvam Kanbom. That is the campaign that is going on now. So center is doing a lot of work which you can look at the website and understand. We are also joined by a lot of persons from the civil society. I want to welcome all of you. And I also want to welcome all the participants who have come from various places, and our own students who are assembled here. I'm sure today we'll be able to understand closely the issue of how this global caste and analogous systems of social hierarchies is affecting, and what we can, as a large community, students, activists, leaders, both political and other NGO leaders, can do together. So with this, I warmly welcome all of you, and I also welcome the members of the press who have joined us, and we look forward to a great deliberation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir, for your warm welcome. And next, I invite Dr. V.A. Ramesh Nathan, sir, former General Secretary, National Dalit Movement for Justice, New Delhi, to deliver introductory address.
Jai Bhim. Jai Bhim. Friends, comrades, indeed I am really grateful. There is a good response from students, universities, civil society organizations, academicians, advocates. I never expected so much of a response for this symposium. Let me try to briefly present the history background of this symposium, because the journey has begun promoting Dalit human rights both national level and the international level, and the journey is almost 30 years over. Can I speak in English or in Tamil? What is the language mainly? Both? Afterwards I can also summarize. Huh? Okay. First of all, I'm really thankful to the Madras School of Social Work and Center for Social Justice and Equity for taking the load of organizing this event, particularly the principal, Dr. Raja Samuel, and the director, Center for Social Justice and Equity, Dr. Pavanindi Vemulu. There is a lot of work last almost a month time, not only organizing the participants, also the other part. I'm really grateful having here the Honorable Member of Parliament, the VCK President, Dr. thol.thirumavalavan here. He has been the process of last 30 years, since from 1998 onwards, when the NCDHR was launched in promotion of Dalit human rights. Since then, he has been part of every stage. The Durban Conference in 2001 and the formation of Asia Dalit Rights Forum in 2013 and Asia Parliamentarian Forum for Dalit Concern 2013 December. He was the first chair of the Asia Parliamentarian Forum. And since then, every important event he has been taken part. Also the Global Forum for Community Based on Work and Dissent, the International Congress which was held in 2019 at New York. So he has been part. That's why we wanted very much one of the leader who speaks daringly about this issue in any platforms. Either it is in the public domain or parliament or everywhere. So that's why we wanted him also to be very much part of this. I'm really grateful having our Dr. thol.thirumavalavan here. And of course, Paul Divakarji, he has been anchoring this entire process since from 1990 onwards. Consistently, he is taking forward this advocacy campaign, both national level, international level, and is now able to organize all the similar forms of discriminated communities at the global level and advocating for the separate declaration and convention to eliminate all forms of the discrimination based on work and dissent, which includes caste. So Paul is the main champion in this, and I'm really grateful because this is the last event after 2019. Last 1 month there has been 4 already completed. One in Delhi, Nagpur, Bangalore, Hyderabad, and this is the last one. Jindal University in Haryana, last night I think, no? 24th. And Beena Pallikal is a General Secretary for the National Campaign on Dalit Human Rights, as well as General Secretary for the Asia Dalit Rights Forum. Also now taken forward this campaign Asia level and global level. Friends, I see that we know the caste-based discrimination and violence existing even today, even after 75 years, despite all legal safeguarding guarantees in the Constitution, as well as many preventive legal measures, including judiciary system, is well established in our country, but the caste-based discrimination violence still prevails. According to 2003 NCRB data, we can see gradually it is increasing the last 10 years. And 2003 report only is available, 4, 5, still it is not released, I think. 57,789 cases were reported. This is only reported numbers, which means every day 12 women, Dalit women and Dalit girls are raped in the country. This is the saddest statistics in the country. In the line, Tamil Nadu is the 11th place. UP is the first, and 11th place is Tamil Nadu. This is also really a shame, because we claim that our state is social justice state, but still the violence are prevalent here. Last 2 years before it was in the 9th place and 10th place, but this year it was 11th place, because in between the Manipur report was hacked this one. But that way, though we claim it, Tamil Nadu is I mean, no doubt that there is a model. Comparatively, other state, this is a better state, but still the caste-based discrimination very much prevails. There are two major reasons. One, there is a greater amount of awareness, assertiveness among the communities, demanding the rights, demanding the implementation of the all preventive legal measures, and that has its own adverse effect. Now, that way the atrocities are rampant. I think, I mean, my gut feeling is that still it will be keep increasing, because more and more when Dalits are asserting. It's because many political parties, Dalit leaders, Dalit movement, Dalit civil society organizations are empowering the communities. So the backlash is the violence. This is one side. The other side, the Hindu fundamentalist groups are becoming politically strong. So that way, the perpetrators are daringly committing the crimes. So that is one side. So which means even though there is a legal measures, Constitution is guaranteed, the untouchability is prohibited according to Article 17, and it is a punishable offense, but still on day-to-day basis, the crimes are committed. The phenomenon, the situation is not only in India, maybe the caste is originated here, but the same form, the same situation prevails in Southeast Asian countries, Bangladesh, Nepal, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, all South Asian countries, the same forms of caste-based discrimination, violence exist. Not only that, excepting India and Nepal, there is no other proper legal mechanism to address the caste issue or to address the kind of violence which are prevalent in the South Asian countries. So that's why when the NCDHR in 1998 launched, it had a two major objective, that is to bring amendments in the UDHR, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and also to include the caste system is also a kind of racial discrimination in the Convention Against the Racial Discrimination, CERD. That was the original idea of our NCDHR. The 2001 was a very, very important milestone in the entire campaign, because that was the first time after our great leader Baba Sahib Ambedkar and Tata Rattamalai Srinivasan, the issue of caste has been represented in the UN World Conference which was held in Durban 2001. and thol.thirumavalavan was there in Durban conference, and Paul Divagar was led a huge contingent of Dalit representatives, member of parliamentarians, activists, and that was the time it was, the international communities were very much aware of the caste system. We have gained momentum in the Durban, and as a result, though there was one of our important resolutions supposed to be adopted in the UN conference, but that time the union government, their representatives very much opposed. It could not be passed, but it had its own impact. International communities are recognized. We gained a momentum, visibilities. As a result, in many European countries, the International Dalit Solidarity Network was emerged, and Paul Divagar was also one of the instrumental in promoting those platforms in many European countries. The European countries is continuously taking forward the issue of caste to the United Nations and many other UN fora and European Commission platforms. Friends, as a continuous advocacy effort, the UN Human Rights Council have constituted two-member committee in 2007, and they have submitted the report in 2009 to UN Human Rights Council, which is called a draft principles and guidelines to eliminate all forms of discrimination based on work and descent. The work and descent is the UN term, where we call it as a caste system here, or Dalit issue, but the UN coined as a work and descent-based discrimination. That principles and guidelines still need to be adopted by UN Human Rights Council based in Geneva. But there is a tool was introduced again to address the issue. But the thing is, in the entire human rights discourse, somewhere, there is a controversy, there is a debate whether this will form into third or this will form into minority issues. Somewhere, so far we have been trying to reach out to even different windows, using different conventions, different treaty bodies. But there is no exclusively a convention or declaration to address the caste issue or similar forms of discrimination at the global level. That is why in 2013, the Asia Dalit Rights Forum was restructured and organized in the conference held in Nepal. And similarly, parallelly, we are promoted the parliamentarian forums, because we need also parliamentarian to raise the issue within the country. Also, some of the parliamentarians need to be raised this issue into the UN bodies and European Union Parliament. I think unless otherwise it is being raised in this international platform, our issue will not get attention at the UN level. The problem is that, whenever we try to move any declaration, any kind of resolution, the UN body, India is the one which daringly take a position, negative positions. So as a result, we are not able to move forward. I remember that in 2017, when we had a global parliamentarian forum in Nepal, we all went and submitted memorandum to the president of Nepal government. And thol.thirumavalavan was there. He is the one also presented the memorandum. He said one important statement: whether India is supporting or not, we, Nepal government, will raise this issue in the UN platforms. He said, we are not just because that the Dalits have to be supported, but he said that Dalits is the one who came to the street and fought against the imperialism in Nepal and established democracy. So certainly it is our obligation to raise the issues in the United Parliament. That is the statement he has made. So we need such a parliamentarian. We need certain government to champion. Actually, India, that's what we have been discussing. India is one of the country which has, the very good constitution. All rights are for all the people are ensured in the constitution, including all the communities, including Dalits. There is affirmative policies. There is a reservation, both for education, employment, and political representations. There is also many preventive laws are enacted here in the country to address the caste system, to address the atrocities. But somewhere at the international platform, the government of India takes adverse positions. Actually, they should happily take leading positions. They should champion, they should raise it, as in the history they raised in support of the issue of racial discrimination. So similarly, they should also take a lead, positive role to address the caste issue at the international platform. So friends, the objective of this symposium is that we wanted to reach out to different constituencies, students, academicians, advocates, civil societies, what's happening in the global level process, what are the efforts that we have taken it in promotion of human rights, both at the national and international level. So, our great leader, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, very well stated, the issue of caste should be discussed in the international platform. Unless otherwise it is internationalized, it will not be going to be addressed the issue, elimination of caste issue in the country. And that is the same position that United Nations should come out or adopt a declaration and separate convention to address the caste system. Unless until then, all countries. So Paul will explain how these similar forms of discrimination exist in other continents. So this is not only the issue of India, it is a global issue. So there need to be a global declaration and convention introduced by the United Nations. So unless otherwise, there will not be any policy measures in other countries. Like Bangladesh, there is no proper legal mechanism to address the caste issue. Pakistan, Sri Lanka, or Japan, Singapore, Malaysia, and even in the European continent, UK also there is a caste system. US, there is a caste system. See, it's become widespread, this issue. So this has to be, discussed at the different level. The youngsters, students, academicians also to be part of this process, raise this issue, awareness, and the demand should come from the ground level so that we will build the momentum at the global level. Over the period of time, definitely, we will achieve our dream that there should be a human rights mechanism to address the caste issue or Dalit issue or similar forms of discrimination. So that way I'm really, really grateful having all the eminent leaders and different constituencies, students, advocates. So I'm really thankful. I hope that definitely you will be joining the process of building at the global level this advocacy process. So thank you very much. Jai Bhim.
Thank you, sir, for clearly outlining the historical context, relevance, and objective of this symposium. Next, okay. Some of you are standing, like we have arranged a live, telecast outside the auditorium also. If you are uncomfortable here, please you can join there also, like those who are standing at the back side. Thank you. So now it's time to felicitate the chief guest. I invite Dr. S. Rajasamal, Principal, Madras School of Social Work, to felicitate the chief guest. First, Principal Sir will felicitate Dr. thol.thirumavalavan, Member of Parliament, former Chair, Asian Parliamentarian. Next, Principal Sir will felicitate Dr. Paul Divakar Nammal. Next, Ms. Beena Palikar. Thank you, sir. Please be seated. Please be seated, sir. Thank you. Next, we move on to the most important segment of the symposium. That is the panel sessions. Our first speaker is Ms. Beena Palikar, a Dalit feminist leader, General Secretary, NCDHR and Chair ADRF. Before handing over the session to her, I invite Ms. Priya Chitra, Center for Social Justice and Equity, to kindly introduce the speaker.
Beena Palikar is currently General Secretary of the Dalit Arthik Adhikar Andolan of National Campaign on Dalit Human Rights. Over the last 11 years, she is with the NCDHR working on the Dalit economic rights. She has been working towards policy changing with the central and state government towards the marginalized communities, Dalit and tribals, and been demanding the Dalit women be included in policy formulation. Her main focus continues to be on economic justice and specifically looking at gender equity. Since 2015, she has been engaging on the SDGs and the high-level political forum to bring in both gender equity but also recognition of communities discriminated and work and descent. She also heads the Asian Dalit Women's Economic Empowerment Program within the Asian Dalit Rights Forum that work and empowering Dalit women in South Asia, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Nepal and India. She is an expert of gender issues and looks at the intersectionality of economic rights and gender. Welcome.
Jai Bhim. I think we should say a little louder because there's so many young people. Jai Bhim. Jai Bhim. Okay, that sounds better. It's great to be here among all of you young people. I think 80% of this crowd is the younger crowd, so it's really nice to be in a space where we are seeing so many young leaders who would tomorrow lead and shape this country's future and the development paradigm in this country. So this subject that we will be talking about and sharing is definitely relevant to the larger development of this country. I acknowledge and appreciate my co-panelists who are sitting on the stage with me. Of course, Dr. Thol, who has been an inspiration for all of us. I think one of the fiercest and boldest leaders who's taken this issue without compromise. And I think that is something that we really need to learn from him. Salute to Sir. Others on the panel, Mr. Paul Divakar, who is a colleague guide and who is one of the founders of the National Campaign on Dalit Human Rights. Of course, the principal, Mr. K. Matthew. I'm told that this is a very vibrant social studies campus, so that's nice to know. Dr. S. Raja Samuel, Dr. Ramesh Nathan, and of course the other two colleagues of mine and friends who will join later, Dr. Asang Wankade and Queen Biseng from Africa and London respectively. I was just wondering what I should open or what I should speak about today, because I'm sure that all of you, caste is not a new aspect for any one of you. You know, it's an aspect that we live, like Dr. Ramesh Nathan already said, that it is this state, despite progressive policy, despite, a lot of conversations around caste, the atrocities are continuing to grow. Honor killings are continuing to go, or so-called honor killings. The name honor killing should be changed, according to me, is continuing to grow. Atrocities are continuing to grow. So it's not that if we, the more we talk about caste, it's going to go away. There, of course, has to be a mindset change. There has to be a change from the dominant who are looking down at us as part of a community or an oppressed community. We are also at a year where we have passed 10 years of Rohit Vemula. And I think 10 years since he became a star. And in these 10 years, a lot has changed, but a lot has not changed either. You know, if he were here today, and I said this in my past talk as well, that he'd be surprised that so many, I think there's some 100-odd suicides that have happened in institutions of higher learning as a result of caste-based discrimination. We would have thought that after the agitation post Rohit Vemula, that would have changed, but that continues to happen. In spaces of higher learning, in spaces where we are supposed to accept no matter what caste, religion you come from, in spaces that we think that we are there to learn and unlearn some of the things that we have learned over the years. But I think that space is a challenge in itself, that how caste continues to operate either passively or actively in these spaces, and how our own children are affected by caste in the country. Of course, Paul will share a lot more about the global system of caste, but I will look at what changed post-Durban. It's been 25 years. I think Dr. Ramesh Nathan already mentioned, 25 years since Durban. Durban was a conference on racism and xenophobia. The first time that the Dalit issue or the caste issue was taken up internationally or globally. Some stalwarts are here who were there, who mobilized and who took the Dalit community. When the community went there, everybody asked, why do you want to take caste to the global level? It's a domestic issue. You handle it in country. Don't take it outside of this country. But somewhere, I think the idea was to change Dalit rights just being Dalit rights to the change from Dalit rights to Dalit rights are human rights. And I think that was a big shift that happened post-Durban, that we're not looking as Dalit rights just as one domestic issue, but as a larger Dalit human rights issue within the larger human rights framework globally. There are several frameworks globally, you know, if you look at it. But this change really gave the communities, at the end, the declaration that came out of Durban did not have caste in it, you know, despite all the talk in all the, you know, advocacy around getting caste in it, it did not feature. But that did not deter the activists who went there or the activists who supported this campaign. What happened then was the National Campaign on Dalit Human Rights and several other Dalit organizations came together and said, we need to organize. We need to organize our people on the ground. We cannot be disappointed by what the global frameworks are doing. We need to change the system within country. That campaign still continues. What happened was we were able to train more than 10,000 Dalit human rights activists on the ground. And what that did was that people on the ground, community members on the ground, felt suddenly that this is my right. The Implementation of Prevention of Atrocities Act is my right. I can go to a police station, sit in front of a police station, and request that my case be held, my case be heard, and that an FIR will be filed. I know 20 years ago, Dr. Ramesh Nathan will agree with me, that it was so difficult to get even one FIR filed because they didn't want to register cases under the Prevention of Atrocities Act. It's still a challenge, but at least people know their rights. And it's not just NCDHR, but several Dalit organizations across the country. I would like to mention People's Watch, Henry, who supported a lot of trainings for the Dalit human rights. There's Ruth Manorama, there's Martin McQuan. A lot of these leaders who were also part of the Durban conference, but who felt that we need to make that change in country. And this change gave a lot of confidence to our people on the ground and said, okay, this is what, these are the principles within the POA Act. How do we change it? And somewhere in 2010, then we initiated this campaign. Of course, Dr. Prasad Sirvala earlier, and then Dr. Rameshnathan took up that campaign to bring in amendments to the Prevention of Atrocities Act. And what that did was a process that galvanized the Dalit and Adivasi communities on the ground to say that we need newer forms of atrocities as part of it. How can we put in mechanisms that can strengthen this act? And over the years of over a period of about 5 to 7 years, we drafted the amendments. The amendments was placed before the Parliament, and almost word to word, it was accepted by the Parliament. Now this process continues. People say, why do you want to take caste to the global level? We are not taking caste to the global instead of the work on the ground. I want to be very clear that we have to draw a distinction that the work on the ground continues despite everything, despite challenges on the ground, despite funding challenges, despite political landscapes being changed. We're still continuing to fight on the ground, ensuring that policies that are drafted for the elimination of caste continues to be implemented effectively. And then we said, okay, in times of, when we have peace, if there's no violence and atrocities, we need education, we need post-metric scholarships, we need housing, we need a frame for budget. And I think Tamil Nadu is the maybe 5th state that has got the scheduled caste sub-plan, a legislation. Congratulations to the state. That is also a very significant moment in history. That was also driven by Dr. Rameshnathan, who is here. And of course, Tholji supported us a lot in this campaign to bring. And what that did was that gave the right to having an allocated budget for these schemes, for the programs on education, housing, land, women's education, specific schemes on scholarship. These are the changes that have happened on the ground post-Durban that actually gave the community a right to say that this is my right. I'm not asking for charity. I'm asking for something that is rightfully mine. If you look at the atrocities and violence that is happening, like already mentioned, almost 12 women are raped on a daily basis within a 24-hour frame, within a 24-hour time frame. It's absolutely horrendous that in a country that we have excellent laws, that we have excellent policies, that this is continuing to happen. And I think unless we, the people on the ground, don't challenge this, this will continue to happen year by year. We see that there is a rise in atrocities. And we need to continue to push and demand for the implementation of the Prevention of Atrocities Act. And that is a level of national level work that is happening 25 years post and the last 25 years since Durban. But then there is also another thing, that in this whole aspect, what we are saying is the line of advocacy from the subnational to the global level, this line of advocacy has to be followed to the T. It has to be ensured that we are still going to the district headquarters. We are still demanding that our cases be heard. We're still talking to the panchayat presidents. We're still talking to the sarpanchas to say that what is needed for the community to develop. And as youth, as people, that you will be taking this country forward and the future of this country and the development of this country, we need to center public policy, and we need to center whatever that we are doing, any policy that we're looking at, the lived realities of Dalits and Adivasis should be the central focus of drafting of public policy in this country. And that is what many of the rights-based organizations who are working on the ground for the development of Dalits and Adivasis continue to do it, looking at keeping and centering the focus on Dalits and Adivasis. Again, we are also demanding, a couple of years ago, I think maybe about 3 or 4 years ago, the ministry said that we don't want to continue with the post-metric scholarship. The people went out on the streets. They initiated a campaign that we cannot afford to not have scholarships. Like that, there are smaller campaigns on every little challenge that has happened, that the work on the ground continues to happen. But then we realized that the work is the caste is not just a thing of this country. Caste also exists in other countries? How can we draw inspiration and support and draw solidarity from each of these groups? My other fellow panelists will speak and shed more light on what is this global caste that we are talking about. Why do we care about somebody who lives in some country who's facing the same type of untouchability practices like us? Why do we have to care? We have our own problems in the country. Well, we do have our own problems. We're still trying to sort those problems out. But it will be great if we build an international and global solidarity to take this issue forward. And finally, I will end by saying that Dalit rights are human rights, but are the dream and the caravan that Baba Sahib started is a caravan to eliminate and annihilate caste. And all of us sitting here in this room, we are in this room because we are part of that campaign and the larger campaign to annihilate caste. And I hope that through these talks, through these engagements, and through solidarity that we give to each other, we are able to move to a path of annihilation of caste completely. Remember that we're still living in a country where a 9-year-old boy was beaten because he took water from his teacher's pot, where somebody was beaten because he was listening to Ambedkar songs, where somebody was beaten because he had dared to put on a mustache, where somebody was beaten because he climbed on a horse for his wedding, where a young girl was raped multiple times because she was going to school. These challenges, these atrocities are not just atrocities, but it is a hate coming from a dominant for the very existence of our lives. And we as a community have to come together subnationally, nationally, regionally, and globally to ensure that we have a mechanism at all levels to address caste-based discrimination and to annihilate caste and fulfill the dream of Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar. Thank you and Jai Bhim.
Thank you, ma'am, for sharing the post-Durban 25 years of experience and the role of ground organization which is working on the ground. And also, yes, we have a long way to go for annihilating the caste. Yes, thank you, ma'am, for stressing on that. Next, our next speaker is Ms. Queen Bisang, will be joining via video conferencing. So, before that, I invite Dr. Susindra, CSJ, to introduce the speaker.
Good evening, on and off the dais. I register my humble and warm evening to everyone, and it gives me immense pleasure on behalf of Center for Social Justice and Equity of Madras School of Social Work to introduce Bisang Queen Angeline. Ms. Bisang Queen Angeline is the Africa Coordinator for GFOD based in Cameroon. She is a human rights expert and specialist on managing physical and digital security for activists and human rights defenders. She is a consultant and resource person on human rights issues who advocates for the rights and the recognition of the status of communities discriminated on work and decent, CDWD, especially in West Africa. Queen holds a degree in humanitarian action and a certificate from the University of Georgia in the USA on African civic engagement. She also holds a certificate from the University of Basel in Switzerland on documentation and archiving from a perspective of dealing with the past. She is a member of the 2019 class of the Young African Leader Program organized by the German Friedrich Herbert Stiftung. She is an advocate for the rights of CDWD associated with the Global Forum of Communities Discriminated on Work and Decent and has been leading GFOD's involvement in the African region. We welcome you, ma'am.
Before my colleague comes, just want to say that with a lot of difficulty, she has acquired her visa here, and she's supposed to be with us in person, but she had a personal tragedy. Her sister passed away in childbirth just before she started, so she's unable to come. So she will share about a very particular phenomena where we feel that caste is a system only in India, but she will share about her experience. And also on the, yes, so this is the, she would tell you about the process, how in all these countries. Later, I think Dr. Ramesh will share, or Deepesh will share copies of this for those students who want to study this. Yeah, please, Queen, over to you. Thank you.
On the pathway Is it okay now? So before highlighting on the pathways towards the elimination of caste and analogous system in Africa, it is important to understand that across Africa, the caste system takes different names and forms depending on the region. In West Africa and the Sahel, we find hierarchies amongst groups such as the Aratins, the Bellas, and the Osu, and occupational stigmatized communities such as blacksmiths, viewers, and fishermen. In parts and East and Central Africa, including Cameroon, Chad, Niger, Mali, and Senegal and Mauritania, communities such as Nimboro, the Pearls, and the Fula subgroups, artisan castes, and former slave descendant population continue to face structural exclusion. Despite cultural differences, this system shares common characteristics. Status is inherited at birth. Marriage across social lines is discouraged or prohibited. Certain communities are confined to specific occupations. Segregation is reinforced through social norms and religious interpretations. Discrimination is normalized and passed from generation to generation. These hierarchies operate quietly through customs, language, community practices, and everyday interaction, making them harder to challenge than more visible forms of discrimination. The consequences are very profound and multidimensional. Firstly, there is a systematic poverty and economic exclusion. Communities at the bottom of these hierarchies are often denied land ownership, decent work, and access to markets. Many are trapped in low-paid, stigmatized labor with no opportunity for upward mobility. Secondly, there are barriers to education. Children from marginalized groups frequently face bullying, exclusion, or low expectations in school. Some drop out early due to discrimination or poverty, perpetuating circles of marginalization. Thirdly, there is restricted access to justice and political participation. Victims of abuse or discrimination rarely report violations, fearing retaliation or dismissal. Representation in local leadership and decision-making is minimal. Fourth and mostly critical, there is a gender impact. Women and girls from these communities face intersecting forms of discrimination based on gender, social origin, and poverty. They are more vulnerable to early and forced marriages, sexual and gender-based violences, harmful traditional practices, limited access to reproductive health services, social isolation, and stigma. Their voices are often the most silent, but yet they carry the heaviest burden. One of the central challenges is that caste-like discrimination in Africa is rarely recognized in law or policy. Most African states prohibit discrimination in general terms. However, very few explicitly acknowledge decent-based or work-based discrimination. As a result, data is not collected. Affected communities are not identified. Target policies do not exist. Development programs fail to reach those most in need. What is not named can never be addressed. This lack of recognition also extends to international spaces. While global framework addresses racism, ethnicity, and gender caste, Caste and Analogous system in Africa remains largely absent from UN mechanisms, development indicators, and donor priorities. This silence reinforces marginalization. Now, eliminating caste and analogous system, as it is a topic, it requires sustained multi-level actions. I want to highlight few 5 pathways. Legal recognition. State must explicitly recognize discrimination based on work and descent and inherited status in national laws. This includes integrating it into anti-discrimination legislation, criminalizing discriminatory practices, ensuring access to remedies and accountability mechanisms. Legal recognition sends a powerful strength. This form of exclusion is not cultural tradition, it is a human rights violation. Data collection and visibility. Government and development partners must invest in disaggregated data to understand who is affected and how are they affected. Without evidence, communities remain visible. But with data, targeted policies becomes possible. Education and social transformation. Education is a critical tool for breaking intergenerational cycles of discrimination. This includes inclusive curricula that challenge harmful stereotypes, teachers training on discrimination and diversity, scholarships and support programs for marginalized children, community dialogue to transform social norms. Change must happen not only in classrooms, but in families, in religious spaces, and traditional institutions. Economic empowerment is also very important. Ending structural exclusion requires economic justice. This means access to land, credit and livelihood, skills training, and employment opportunities, support for women's economic leadership, inclusion for marginalized communities in development planning. Economic independence strengthens dignity and agency. The most important is centering affected communities, especially women. Most importantly, solutions must be led by those directly impacted and affected. Organizations of communities discriminated by work and descent, particularly women-led, must be meaningfully included in policy and decision-making, advocacy, and program design. They are not merely beneficiaries, they are agents of change. Eliminating these hierarchies is not solely the responsibilities of communities. Civil societies, government, academics, and international partners have an important role to play. These issues must be treated with the same seriousness as other forms of structural inequalities. I want to conclude by saying that caste and analogous forms of system and social hierarchies in Africa are not relics of the past. They are living realities that continue to shape access to dignity, opportunity, and justice for millions of people. Eliminating them requires visibility, courage, and collective actions. It requires naming the problem, listening to the affected communities, challenging harmful norms, and building inclusive society where no one's future is determined by birth. This is not only a matter of social justice, it is essential for sustainable development, peace, and human dignity across the continent. Let us commit to ensuring that no community remains invisible, no hierarchy remains unquestioned. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Queen. I'll just share a gist of what you have shared, because the sound was a little not clear, and also the accent we are not used to a particular way. So allow me to just share in a few words. So what Queen was sharing was, number one, whenever she hears of caste, people think it is only a South Asia issue, but she is saying no, because she has worked in several countries in in Africa, the Western Africa, and also Western Africa is Mali, Mauritania, Niger, Burkina Faso, Senegal, and several other countries in the Western Sahara or Sahel region. Most of it is Francophone, French-speaking. But also in the eastern side, where Somalia, Ethiopia, Kenya, Tanzania, and others, and also in the central and south. But the evidence that she has come across is mostly in the Western Africa and also parts of Eastern Africa, where in certain countries, cemeteries are separate. You can't bury in the same cemetery. There is a concept of purity pollution, that if you touch these communities, and even now they are called or they are forced to be named as slaves, though there is a rejection by the community who's called as slaves. The dominant are called, or they call themselves as nobles, and the excluded, who are regarded as polluted, are called as slaves even today. And when they refuse to call themselves or to be named as slaves, they are driven away from the mosques, where Islam is the religion of those countries. In schools, they are excluded. In access to water, public amenities, there is a discrimination. Either they are excluded from those water sources, or they have to only take it after everybody, the so-called nobles, are taking. Look like, when it looks, as far as the looks are concerned, they look the same. Same language, same culture, same features, all of them are Africans. Similar to what we experience here as either untouchables or whatever, Dalits that we name or is given to us. So these, they have come together in the name which today is given by the United Nations, Communities Discriminated on Work and Descent. And she, along with many of us, has led this aspect in the Africa Commission on Human and People's Rights, which is a body, Pan-Africa body, which covering over 61 countries. And they have passed a resolution, and the resolution copy is here with the director. I'll share it. If any of the students would like to study, please see. And Queen was one of the key people who led the voices of the communities presented to the Africa Commission, and today they have a resolution, but then there is a long way. They have to give more evidence as to where and how these practices are being happening on a day-to-day basis. And then after the study, Commission will have to, together with the leaders, will frame a policy which will then be taken to as a law by several countries in Africa. Thank you very much, Queen, for this sharing.
Thank you, ma'am, and thank you, sir. To introduce our next speaker, Dr. Asang Wangde, grassroots organizer, lawyer specializing in anti-discrimination law, I invite Mr. Sankrapandi, CSJA, to kindly introduce the speaker.
Good afternoon. It's my honor to introduce one of our panel guests, Dr. Asang Wangde. Yeah. Dr. Asang Wangde holds a doctoral degree in law from University of Oxford. His research examines Indian constitutional law and the link between caste and poverty in affirmative action policies. Yeah. In 2022, he published a book, Affirmative Action for Economically Weaker Section and Upper Caste in Indian Constitutional Law with Routledge, UK. This book is the first detailed legal critique of EWS reservation in India. It was notified by the Bar Council of India as a compulsory reference for constitutional law courses in Indian law schools. Asang is currently appointed as the lead researcher for the Australian Human Rights Commission's first ever national community consultation on caste discrimination in 2024. This study aims to capture the lived experiences of caste oppressed communities in Australia through qualitative empirical research. Beyond academia, he writes opinion pieces for The Guardian and reviews articles for the leading academic journals. His work is strongly grounded in real-world engagement. As a student organizer, he has challenged institutional caste discrimination and created mentoring and academic support programs for marginalized students. With this, I warmly welcome Dr. Asang Wangde. Yeah.
Again, sorry, while coming here, he already came from London, landed in Nagpur, traveled to Bangalore, but then he had a small accident where he hurt his back and he was in the hospital. Very sorry that he's not able to be with us in person. But he said he will be able to come and speak to us on online.
Can you hear me? Hello?
I can hear you, Asang.
Yeah?
I can hear you.
Whatever.
I
Okay,
don't know
thank you.
people in the room.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it is okay. Hello, everyone, and it's a rare honor to be presenting this online. First of all, I would like to start with an apology. I was supposed to be there in person, but due to my health, I couldn't travel. And as Paul has mentioned about my recent accident, I was sort of really restrained to bed. Member of Parliament, Shri thol.thirumavalavan, with whom I had a big honor, to chair one of these sessions at the House of Lords in London, UK, and to whom I really, of course, not only think highly of, but all youngsters are really grateful to his leadership in the Indian Parliament, and we always say to him that he's really our representative there, considering that how other political parties and the scheduled caste member of parliaments may not speak for us, right? So, is everything okay? You can hear me, right? So, sorry, can you hear me? Okay, perfect. Sorry, yeah, I was just confirming. So, thol.ji, thirumavalavan and Paul, Dina, and the entire team, thank you so much for having me here. In this brief 15 to 20 minute intervention, I will outline what is the international framework on decent and work-based discrimination. And I will start with the question as to why this should all matter to you. Now, the first aspect is that this initiative by Paul, Bina, and others at the international level is not to replace or displace the national level efforts, right? That's the first argument. Because both have to go complementary side by side. The second is why this should matter to all of you is because our rights as Dalits and caste oppressed communities globally have been not recognized by the country, India, our country, which is which has the most significant population of communities based on work and descent, the caste oppressed communities. And the second aspect is why the recognition that we see in international law comes to our benefit, and it is not very different from what we are demanding. I do not know if the political situation has been discussed in this conference. Maybe it will be discussed by other people. But the fact is that we are not, as people who are doing advocacy at international level, to shame India. We are here to claim our fundamental human rights, and that's what we have been claiming for the longest time. It is not, and it should not be of any controversy for the Indian government, or for that matter, any other government outside of India. Let's shift the focus outside of India for a second and think about other countries as well, which have these communities based on work and descent, and should, under the international human rights law, have an obligation. It's a binding obligation on those countries to do something about the people. Now, let me start with outlining what and where do we really borrow this terminology from. Community based on work and descent. Of course, the UN subcommission in its draft guidelines and its subsequent reports after the Durban conference in 2001 were the ones who came up with this terminology, work and descent based discriminated communities. But it was really in 2002, and it because of the efforts of Paul and others and his team in 2002, when they approached Professor Thornberry of the Committee on Elimination of Racial Discrimination at the UN, to get a general recommendation passed at the international level. Now, I will not do an international law class for all of you, because I can imagine that you are all non-lawyers. But the focus here must be that this we are not pulling out of thin air. This has a substantial basis of one of the strongest committees, as we know, in international law, the Committee of Elimination of Racial Discrimination. The background for this is that in 1964 and 1965, we have the international UN body came up with the International Convention on Elimination of Racial Discrimination. Now, ICERD is the short form of it, and ICERD is the single most treaty which is known for its outlook on racial discrimination. Now, it was India, the Indian government, which introduced the amendment to the CERT, then draft convention, where they said the word decent, D-E-S-C-E-N-T, must be mentioned, because they accepted that this international convention, when it is ratified by the Indian government, would apply to the question of scheduled caste. Now, in this regard, you have to focus on two aspects. First is, of course, the applicability of the international convention on Indian government, and especially the question of scheduled caste. And second, the later and subsequent denial by the Indian government, which is unfortunate, saying that caste and race are not the same, and therefore this international convention doesn't apply to the rights of Dalits. Now I will, dissect this. Right. First is that Indian government said that we already, 15 years before the convention was being adopted, have a comprehensive set of anti-discrimination law. It said that we have the reservations policy and the then Untouchability Act and the subsequent civil rights legislation to safeguard the rights of scheduled castes and scheduled tribes in this particular country. In that regard, it said the amendment should be made to Article 1 by introducing Article 1, Subclause 1, to introduce the word decent. Right? So we have to understand that there did not be any controversy that India in 1964 itself accepted the operation and the applicability of the convention to the scheduled caste section. Now, what has happened is subsequently we have seen time and again India has denied that on the grounds that caste is not race, and that caste discrimination is exclusively a domestic issue, has been the ground on which India has opposed this inclusion. Now, our academic input is to not shame Indian government, or for that matter, say that it is something that is on the Indian government to exclude it, or to single out Indian government. But our focus is really to claim that, okay, when in 1964 it was already not controversial to accept the applicability of this international convention, then why does India oppose the General Recommendation 29? Now, for the non-lawyers in the room and people who do not have international background, I can briefly explain that General Recommendation is a non-binding interpretation by the treaty body. Now, the moment international law treaty is established and which a particular country signs up, we are under an obligation to follow whatever is the interpretation that has been made by the treaty. The treaty, because of the efforts of Paul and his team, in 2002, came up with General Recommendation 29, which says that caste and analogous forms of discrimination are already covered under the existing international human rights law instruments. And therefore, what was decided in that regard was that, okay, this is applicable, but it was not only limited to caste. But the word decent is where we actually use that coinage of the UN to bring in our issues before the UN body, but it is not only limited to caste. Rather, it is an open framework, and Paul has explained very clearly that there are other communities which inherited status is the word that we have to focus on, the caste line. But what is important is that caste became the normative center point for this recognition at the UN level, saying that caste and caste-alike forms of discrimination are now covered or interpreted under the existing treaty. Now, there are two aspects of it. Nobody claims that caste is race. It's very clear. I mean, we not even go into that debate at all, because Indian government always evokes it. What we are claiming is that the racial discrimination framework is a broader framework which is applicable to all of us. And the racial discrimination framework has already been adopted in the Indian Constitution, as we know in Article 15 and Article 16, which is a non-discrimination code, which mentions that we as individuals should not be discriminated based on caste, creed, race, gender, etc. Now, what our demand is at the international level, and I'll briefly explain the Australian example as well, and as to how this terminology is so important for us Dalits abroad, is that with more the second generation scheduled caste population going outside, caste discrimination in diaspora is a very big issue. When thol.thirumavalavan ji was in House of Lords, we were launching the UK caste, anti-caste struggle there. So it was thol.thirumavalavan ji whose hands were able to launch the Everyday Casteism portal to collect the lived experiences of the discriminated communities. Now what we have to understand is that caste is not uniquely a problem only to India, right? And it is also that we have to look beyond caste. And the reason for doing all of this is because the more the second generation and the third generation scheduled caste populations, they go outside, they continue to face worse forms of discrimination in the spaces outside. This is something that we understand is a foresight of Dr. Ambedkar, who said that Dr. Ambedkar said way back in 1936, 35, that wherever Indians would migrate, they would take caste discrimination with them. People in the room would have read that quote, and this is now the empirical reality. Having said that, we have to focus on why this particular terminology at the UN helps us, make that click. And Australia, as it was mentioned by the person who was introducing me, I led this anti-caste struggle to successfully recognize caste-based discrimination as a form of intersectional racism in the National Anti-Racism Framework. Right? We were able to do that through a comprehensive study throughout Australia, where we documented lived experiences of Dalits in Australia, where the instances of untouchability were found in Sydney. Children as young as 10 years old got discriminated based on, faced untouchability. There was an instance in Melbourne University where for a Diwali celebration, the Hindu society run by the students in the Melbourne University had printed out a poster. At the bottom, they had written, inviting everyone. So the poster was to invite everyone for Diwali. At the bottom, they wrote in bold letters, scheduled castes and scheduled tribe students are not allowed to attend. Right? These are some instances, and of course, there have been instances of physical assault, etc., that have happened. I can go on, but this was to just give you an overview that why this thing happened. Now, how this terminology decent was used in Australia. So under my leadership in Australia, we were able to contact the Australian Human Rights Commission, and we wrote to the president that, okay, boss, you have recognized caste as a form of racial discrimination, but without a complaints mechanism, this particular recognition is of no use. And therefore, we went ahead and then petitioned for having a complaints mechanism. And Australia became the first country globally to get recognized at the federal level when you can file an official complaint to the Australian Human Rights Commission if you have been discriminated based on caste. And this has happened only because of this terminology. The president's letter to me, when AHRC president wrote to me, said that it is the interpretation by this third committee. And thanks to Paul and his team in 2002, 23 years later, we were able to use that exact terminology for our help. So Australia has been the first country to recognize caste and this interpretation in the favor. Unfortunately, last year Indian government said no, caste is not race and we do not recognize this as a. So in this context, what we need to build at the grassroots level is that we should petition in a very healthy manner to the government demanding our rights. Because the question of recognition did not and cannot stop only here in Indian government, so at the Indian level, at the national level. And lastly, I will make this point that we as individuals must recognize that joining forces with other similar form of communities is very crucial. Why is it very crucial? Because if we don't do that, then we will be sidelined as well as at international level. And what we are demanding is not to dilute the relevance of caste discrimination. Rather, we are saying is that we have other brothers and sisters out there in the world who face similar forms of historical inherited status-based discrimination, and therefore all of us must come together in this fight. I'd like to thank the organizers for having me, and I would be happy to take some questions as well. Jai Bhim and Salam.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for establishing the context of Durban Conference and the caste in global arena. What is the contemporary situation of caste in the global arena, and the need for the terminology like within the global arena, the dissent and intersectional race, caste is intersectional racism, all that. Thank you, sir. Next.
Sorry, I cannot hear you if you're speaking.
Yeah, I can't hear. Okay. So we'll take the question later. So our next speaker is Simona Trotsky. She is the UN coordinator for Global Forum of Communities Discriminated on Work and Dissent. She is from the Roma community. I welcome you, ma'am.
Hello, everyone. Am I audible? Can you hear me? Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a true pleasure to be here today, and I want to thank the organizers for convening this important dialogue. As the introducer said, I'm a Roma myself. The Roma community, it's a group that has originated from the north of India 1,000 years ago. We come from a group called the Doma people community, and because of our ancestry, we have when we migrated towards Europe, we have been perceived as untouchables, as unclean, as polluting people. And I'm from Romania, so when we arrived in Romania, just because of our social status and the way the others have been portraying us, Roma have been enslaved for 500 years, the longest slavery period in Europe. And they were tied to landlords, to even to the Orthodox Church has an important role in maintaining this form of slavery. But across Europe, Roma communities have been always segregated, pushed at the margins of the community. And we are trying to understand what is this specific form of discrimination that Roma face. And we have a specific terminology. We say anti-gypsies. We have followed the terminology that others have been using for anti-Semitism, for example. But nowadays, the fact that since 2002, 2008, we have started to join forces with other communities worldwide. And I think the strongest allyship we have so far is with the Dalit community, also because of this historical roots that we have. So nowadays we are about 12 to 18 million Roma across Europe, but also a significant proportion of Roma population in North America, Latin America, but also the Middle East and Eastern Europe. So what is very specific about Roma? As I said, just because of the perception of the others as different, as untouchable, because of the work that many of the Roma communities were doing, we have been pushed at the margins of the society. And we see nowadays that this stigmatization, this systemic exclusion, and the segregation very much resembles to what's happening also across the world. As my colleague Queen has spoken and Asang, we in the case of Roma we are not portrayed as a caste, but definitely is an analogous system of social hierarchy, which assigns us by birth, by our social status, to be, as I said, often excluded from formal employment, for political participation, and benefiting from all the public goods that are available to the society. So we say that this discrimination is not accidental, it's structural, because we see it both from the side of institutions, but also from the mainstream population. So Roma children are segregated in schools, are pushed at the margins by their peers. Roma who have a job are always perceived as different by their colleagues. Even Roma professionals who achieved a certain level of education are not fully acknowledged for their potential and the contribution that they make. So this form of discrimination, it's visible, but many decide not to talk about it, and especially state institutions. We see that across Europe, several governments have taken good steps to address the discrimination that Roma are facing, especially Spain. They have introduced Roma-related discrimination in the criminal code. Romania also has a law on anti-Gypsyism, but many other communities are left out. We don't have this system of protection, especially in countries where nowadays we see that even politicians and high-level state figures are having a rhetoric against the Roma. So we as civil society activists, as leaders, as youth movements, as women organizations, we are pushing from our side to advance legal advocacy, recognition, but also to make sure that we dismantle these existing barriers that our children are facing. But this is a fight, because we see across Europe that civil society organizations are being pushed away. Many governments are being very selective on which civil society organizations should remain, which one should be closed, who receives funding from whom. And it's becoming a difficult fight for many of our Roma activists across Europe to do their work. So what we need definitely stronger political will. And as I said, many of our governments don't have this political will. They have the political will to evict Roma from Roma settlements, to support police violence against Roma, to make sure that Roma don't have kind of their voice heard. So we need a stronger legal recognition framework. And most especially, we need an international accountability, because as I started, the issue that Roma is facing is not only in Europe, but across the world. So a significant population experiencing this form of discrimination. So we need international accountability, and we need a system that addresses the situation of Roma. And maybe now it sounds a bit not so much similar to the situation of Dalits or the African communities my colleagues spoke about. But when you go into communities, and I think many, like Paul, for example, he visited several Roma communities in the last few years, and said this is very much similar to what's happening, across the other communities, because he has visited also the other communities. So we need global efforts to eliminate this type of systems. As I said, it's a global issue. It's not a regional issue. It's not a country-specific issue. And it's very important that human rights bodies, national governments, and most especially UN mechanisms recognize this form of discrimination. Yeah, so beyond South Asia. Yeah, this is not a South Asian thing only. And this frameworks must address the inherited social exclusion that we are facing. So what I'm proposing more specifically is that member states across the globe, especially those who have a significant population of descent-based communities, recognize this form of discrimination in law. I also would like to request member states and also civil society organizations to support to end segregation in education, housing, and more specifically employment, because most of the Roma, in my case, are pushed to do jobs that other members of the community would not do. So we are the street sweepers, we are the domestic cleaners, we do the waste pickers, we do most of the jobs that others would not do. We also, as a young Roma woman myself, I think it's very important that stakeholders take action to protect Roma women from compounded and normalized violence, because this form of discrimination became a normalized form of violence that many fail to recognize. And as Asang also said, we must strengthen global solidarity. And I'm very proud to say that what we have achieved in the last 4 years since I joined this movement, it's exceptional. And I think alone we would not, alone as Roma I'm referring, we would not have been able to achieve what we achieved so far. So it's very important that we strengthen this global solidarity. We might disagree in many respects, we might be different in many respects, but I think it's very important that we agree on a common goal, on a global framework that we want to have for our communities. And I really hope that working together to address and hopefully to eliminate this global caste and social hierarchies and discrimination would support us to have a fair future, not a better future, a fair future for the younger generations. So thank you very much. And if you have any specific questions, I would be happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for your sharing the experience of Roma communities and emphasizing on global solidarity in terms of against the discrimination against dissent and work-based discrimination. Thank you, ma'am. We'll take the question answer session in the last. So before we break for tea, I request the chief guest and distinguished speakers to kindly come forward for the release of the poster Samatvam Kanbo. So we'll release it is part of a Samatvam campaign which is happening across Tamil Nadu. Participants also might have received the posters. So as we raise the poster, let's all together raise the slogan, Samatvam Kanbom, ensure equality. Everyone, please stand up. Okay. Samatvam Kanbom, ensure equality. Camera light. Okay. Yes, sir. Please, audience, please be seated. உட்கார்ந்துக்குங்க. ஓகே, அங்க இருந்து எடுத்தாங்க. ஓகே. சமத்துவம் காண்போம். Ensure equality. சமத்துவம் காண்போம். Ensure equality. So we'll take a group picture. So chief guest can stay here. From there, they'll take. இங்க முன்னாடி
இது முடிந்த பிறகு தேநீர் இடைவெளி உள்ளது. தலைவருக்கு பின்னாடி யாரும் செல்ல வேண்டாம். ஒரு 10 நிமிடம் தனியாக தலைவரை தேநீர் இருந்து விடுங்கள். இது முடிந்த பிறகு உங்கள் அனைவருக்கும் தேநீர் வெளியில் காத்திருக்கிறது. வால் ஆஃப் ஜஸ்டிஸ் அனைவரும் சென்று வால் ஆஃப் ஜஸ்டிஸ் அந்த பிளெக்ஸ் பேனர்ல அனைவரும் உங்களுடைய கையெழுத்தை இட்டுவிட்டு செல்லவும். Now you can stand up, I think. You can stand up.